Has former AEW EVP Cody Rhodes taken a thinly veiled shot at Chris Jericho for recent comments in an AEW podcast interview? We're going to talk about that story. Plus, Bandido has agreed terms with All Elite Wrestling. Sammy Guevara posts an ironic comment on his latest vlog episode. We've got news on cancelled plans for the Young Bucks, plus plans for Ring of Honor going forward, and a major AEW event is returning. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling, AEW. Let's start off with a little bit of beef. Something in AEW regarding heat or beef between two wrestlers, right? Come on. It's just another day in the world of professional wrestling, I guess, with that. So, the day ends in Y, which by that rule means at least one professional wrestler must take to social media to deliver a cryptic post that has fans guessing who or what they're referring to. Now, today's participant in this is none other than WWE superstar and former AEW Executive Vice President, the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes, who of course is currently out of action after going under the knife for that torn pectoral muscle. But Rhodes took to Instagram on one of his IG stories earlier today to post the following statement, which one could be forgiven, I suppose, for thinking this is a shot at some unknown person. Now, we might have actually figured out who this unknown person is in just a second, but this is what Rhodes had to say on his IG story, saying, quote, "You're clearly doing something right when others try to imitate or even take credit for things you've created. Don't take it personally, fans remember, and that's what it's all about," Rhodes said. "Keep doing the work." Now, as is typically the case when it comes to these cryptic posts, who or what Rhodes is referring to is unclear. While some have wondered if this is directed towards someone in AEW, where Rhodes worked for the past 3 years before returning to WWE earlier this year, the wrestling star has recently spoke positively about AEW on Twitter, crediting himself, wife Brandi Rhodes, and Elite members Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, along with Dustin Rhodes and Chris Jericho, for help building the company to where it is now. As I mentioned, Rhodes, of course, is currently on the sidelines in WWE as he recovers from his torn pectoral muscle he suffered just days before his match against Seth freaking Rollins at WWE Hell in a Cell in June. While many are hopeful that Rhodes can be a surprise return for the Royal Rumble, no firm timetable for a return has been set as of this recording right now. But let's go back to that statement once again. He said, quote, "You're clearly doing something right when others try to imitate or even take credit for things you've created. Don't take it personally. Fans remember, and that's what it's all about. Keep doing the work." Now, this has led to a lot of people speculating, who was he referring to? Who was he talking about? Well, it's certainly possible that he was talking about current Ring of Honor World Champion and the first ever AEW World Champion Chris Jericho, because in an interview done earlier this week with the AEW Unrestricted podcast, Chris Jericho has claimed that Cody Rhodes wasn't a top star before AEW became a huge deal in the wrestling industry. Now, of course, perhaps the biggest and one of the, most recent in modern wrestling history, game-changing wrestling events in the last decade at least, was 2018's All In pay-per-view. Now, the success of that show, which was spearheaded by the likes of the Elite and Cody Rhodes, inspired the formation of All Elite Wrestling, which of course is Tony Khan's company. Now, fans took notice that this was a serious proposition, though, AEW, when Chris Jericho signed on to the promotion on January 8th, 2019. Then, of course, on the 19th of May later that year, AEW partnered with Warner Media for an episodic television show called AEW Dynamite. But during an interview on the latest AEW Unrestricted podcast, Chris Jericho claimed the Elite and Rhodes were not household names in the United States before the formation of AEW. While he believed the company would have succeeded without him, he still thought it wouldn't have left quite a significant impact that it did in the industry. He said, quote, "Keep in mind, no one really knew Cody at that point. He'd been gone for years. The last time we'd seen him, he was Stardust when he left WWE. And as much buzz as Kenny and Matt and Nick Jackson had, they were still mostly just regional guys. They were worldwide stars when it comes to national TV in the States. They didn't have any experience with that. If I'm the bridge to get here, check me out. Then look at all the other guys we have. Would the company have happened if I wasn't there? Probably, but I don't think it would have grown as quickly as it did, or maybe gotten off to such a huge start." Now, this is really one of opinion. Now, first of all, it must be said, we don't know that Cody Rhodes is indeed referencing Chris Jericho there. It feels like it's no coincidence that, he posts that IG story just days after those comments came about Jericho. Was Cody a big name before AEW? I mean, people knew who he was. I mean, maybe Jericho's taken a bit of creative license there. I mean, saying that no one really knew who Cody Rhodes was at that point, that is a stretch. Cody Rhodes had been on WWE television from 2007, I believe he made his WWE debut, until 2016. Granted, during the last few years, he was Stardust, but for a period of time there, for a long period of time, he was Cody Rhodes, and whilst he wasn't working on top, he had several big matches as Cody Rhodes in WWE. He'd worked with the likes of Randy Orton. He'd had match as part of the Legacy faction. He'd had, big matches, I remember, at SummerSlam in 2009, facing off against DX, and whilst he never became WWE champion or world heavyweight champion or anything of that nature, he had big matches in WWE against The Shield at Battleground in 2013, and he had been a multiple-time Intercontinental champion, multiple-time tag team champion. Was he a star akin to the level of Chris Jericho? Absolutely not. He was not a star of the size of Chris Jericho, but neither was Kenny Omega, neither were the Young Bucks, and I agree an aspect of what Jericho is saying there, that Jericho, at the time that he was signed by All Elite Wrestling, was the biggest star in the company. He was their biggest signing. He was a WWE guy. He had been with the WWE since 1999, and yes, he had done work for companies like New Japan after sort of venturing out of that WWE bubble somewhat, and even that, him doing work for New Japan was staggering and surprising, but he had this rule. He was only going to work for shows, for companies outside of the United States. If it was in the US, it was for WWE. So signing Jericho was a really big deal, and Jericho absolutely gave All Elite Wrestling legitimacy, and Chris Jericho being the first AEW World Champion was absolutely the right choice, because to television networks, Warner Media, it was a big name. It was a name they knew, and it was a name they could market, and they could say, who's the champion in AEW? And they could go, it's Chris Jericho. They could go, I know who Chris Jericho is. And certainly there were more people that knew who Chris Jericho was as opposed to who Cody Rhodes was. That is factually accurate. Now, again, that's not to say that Cody Rhodes, Kenny Omega, and the Young Bucks still were not instrumental in the formation of AEW, because they were the ones that did the announcement that a new company was coming that was All Elite Wrestling. Whilst it's Tony Khan's company, Rhodes, the Bucks, and Kenny Omega were absolutely massively important in the formation of AEW, and you can't look past that. So for Jericho to say that nobody knew who Cody Rhodes was prior to AEW is not particularly fair. If he had phrased it as, I was a bigger star or a bigger name or a better known name than Cody Rhodes, that's absolutely fair to say. But I think it does kind of somewhat diminish Rhodes' importance on AEW, and I do kind of, maybe, some of the more saltier AEW fans kind of, as time goes on, try to diminish Rhodes and the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega's effect on the formation of the company. I think AEW, would it have been formed without Chris Jericho? Yeah, it would have. Absolutely it would have. Because what Tony Khan saw after the success of All In, which really was the pilot for AEW, and I think Khan had been having some discussions about putting together a company prior to them, but what he saw there was a group of guys that weren't signed to WWE, that their contracts were coming up at the same time with New Japan Pro Wrestling and Ring of Honor, and he thought, look, there's a nucleus of guys there I can build a company around. It's one thing just to say, I'm forming a company. You've got to have stars. And there were stars there. Now, were they huge worldwide stars that you could sell a lot, make a lot of money off? Maybe not. It was going to take a little bit to sort of really recognize them on a national level. But they were stars nevertheless. So I think Jericho's comments do somewhat imply that maybe, he was the most pivotal aspect. I don't know. But clearly Rhodes might have been a bit perturbed by that. Maybe he was talking about something else. But that certainly, I feel like, is connected there. Bandido. We know Bandido was offered an AEW contract after his impressive performance against the aforementioned Chris Jericho last week. And it would appear to be some good news emanating from AEW. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select is reporting that former Ring of Honor World Champion Bandido has indeed agreed terms with All Elite Wrestling. Of course, Bandido debuted for the company on short notice in a Ring of Honor World Championship match last week on Dynamite against Chris Jericho. Despite losing the match got rave reviews. Now, Fightful haven't heard that Bandido has officially put pen to paper and signed on the dotted line, as it were, but he was offered a deal last week. and those close to the wrestler say that he has agreed to terms with Tony Khan's company. It was previously reported by Sean Ross Sapp this past weekend that Bandido was booked on such short notice that he actually struggled to get gear in time for the match. A chain of events unfolded that led to him piecing together the gear that he wore that evening. Thankfully, he did have a mask, but he was rushing around town. He was trying to buy back gear he had auctioned off. But several that were backstage spoke highly of Bandido's demeanor and attitude in the situation, from not being able to get his gear to being brought in to lose his first match. He was visibly excited after the match and hugged AEW president Tony Khan. Fightful have heard there has been interest from numerous companies about signing Bandido in recent months. AEW has not confirmed this news to Fightful as of this recording right now. If AEW could get this one over the line, it would be fantastic for All Elite Wrestling, no doubt. Bandido's performance was excellent last week, and it would be a great signing for AEW. However, we have also seen a lot of great signings for AEW not be used particularly well, or they come in and then what are they doing in a couple of weeks' time? I think that would be the concern with Bandido. Now, initially he'll be working for AEW, but as we get closer and closer to really figuring out what's going to go on with Ring of Honor, and we are going to talk about Ring of Honor in today's video, maybe Bandido will be heavily influential in that. Of course, prior to making his AEW debut last week, he was also wrestling for Ring of Honor at Supercard of Honor as the one of the Ring of Honor World Champions before Jonathan Gresham defeated him. So initially he'll be working with AEW, but chances are he could be featured in the Ring of Honor brand as well whenever that is up and running. So there's the news on Bandido. Sammy Guevara. Oh, Sammy Guevara. We did a video yesterday talking about the backstage beef, or the Twitter beef, the social media comments back and forth between Sammy Guevara and Andrade, and he's made an ironic comment amid his online feud with Andrade AEW. Now, of course, social media has been abuzz with fans discussing this ongoing beef between Guevara and Andrade. This comes off the heels of Guevara's previous backstage drama with Eddie Kingston after the two had an altercation. In the latest episode of his vlog, Guevara discussed all of the backstage drama that has affected All Elite Wrestling as of late. Here's what he said, quote, "There's just so much drama that goes on in wrestling. It's really exhausting. It's tiring. Seems like every couple of weeks there's something. I'm minding my own business, on vacation, and then, people want to start drama with me. It is what it is. It's the life I signed up for, I suppose. But it's definitely tiring, and maybe I'll need to go on another vacation next week because, size, stressful. Either way, for the people that actually support me, for the people who watch these vlogs, part of the vlog crew, I appreciate you." Now, the thing is with Sammy Guevara is he's complaining here, talking about all of the drama that's going on in pro wrestling, and he's painting himself, as you would expect, as the innocent one in all of this. I'm just sitting here minding my business. I'm on vacation. People want to start drama with me. It is what it is. It's tiring, and maybe I'll go on another vacation in another week because it's stressful. Every couple of weeks, someone's starting drama with me. If it's always you, you do have to then look at yourself. Why is it always me? Mario Balotelli vibes. Why always me? Look at yourself. Say, why is it always that I'm involved in drama? Is it something to do with me? Am I rubbing people the wrong way? Could I conduct myself in a better manner? Could I behave better? Could I not respond on social media about all of this stuff? Could I, if I see Andrade saying things about me in an interview, why don't I handle that in person? Why don't I go to talent relations? Why don't I go to the president of the company, my boss, or someone above me and figure this out? Why do I feel the need to go on social media and get into an embarrassing shouting match on Twitter? And why is it always me? Why, in the last couple of months, have I had incidents with two people? Now, I'm not saying Sammy Guevara is in the wrong. I'm not saying Sammy Guevara is the instigator here. However, when it's you twice, and when he behaved like he did yesterday, and Andrade isn't innocent either, it must be said, but that whole situation yesterday was embarrassing. As just a fan watching it and reading it, let alone for people in the company. We saw what Ricky Starks had to say, where he said, "I wish my co-workers would just shut the F up." And as a fan, I just was looking at the wrestlers going, to shut the F up. Handle it. This isn't, what is this? This is primary school. Why are they shouting at each other on social media? It was ridiculous. And then for him to be on his vlog and saying, "Oh, there's just so much drama in wrestling." Oh, yeah, there kind of is. The Young Bucks, of course, they're currently suspended after their involvement in Brawl Out, but it has emerged that a plan involving the Young Bucks has been scrapped as a result of the fallout from the infamous AEW All Out Media Scrum and subsequent brawl. Now, the Young Bucks, who won and were subsequently stripped of the AEW Trios title, along with Kenny Omega at All Out, were to feature heavily in promotions on AEW TV for their sneaker collaboration with Italian sportswear brand Diadora. The official Young Bucks and Diadora sneakers were announced at the beginning of September via the tag team's Twitter. They were exclusively available through Champ Sport on Wednesday, September 28, and sold out by the end of the day. AEW promoted the sneakers on their social media channels and celebrated the successful launch despite the Young Bucks suspension from the company. But according to Dave Meltzer, more promotion for the sneakers was planned for AEW TV, but of course was scrapped due to the fallout from the AEW All Out incident. Speaking to Wrestling Inc., Meltzer said, quote, "They didn't promote it on television and it didn't matter because it sold out instantly, but I mean the original thing was to promote it hard on television and that didn't happen at all. So I think they're willing to go in on social media to a degree. Look, they haven't mentioned their names on television once." Now, referring to the All Out incident, Meltzer described the scrapping of the plans as, quote, awkward. He continues saying, quote, "And I think that it's awkward as a viewer when Punk was the world champion and then we all watched him win the world title and now his name is never mentioned and all of a sudden Moxley's the champion after having lost to Punk. It's one of those things that hurts a promotion and so they've all got to kind of get past that. It's just one of those tough situations. Every promoter will go through them many, many times in their life, but this was one of them. So they did sell out, so I guess it isn't a massive issue in the end, but I guess from a general marketing perspective, a brand awareness and a brand perspective kind of situation, how you would perceive a brand, AEW would look very good if their talents had these big, you're saying, oh, these are custom-made Diadora sneakers that are out right now. This would look great for AEW, but the incident is what it is, I suppose. Ring of Honor. Let's talk a little bit about Ring of Honor. What's next for Ring of Honor? Well, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter has an idea of what could be the promotion's next step. He spoke about this in this interview with Nick Hausman of Wrestling Inc. He said, quote, "I think we're waiting on a TV deal. I don't know how easy it is. It's probably not easy to get at this stage, but I think that's what it is. And until then, Khan's trying to keep it alive on television, putting championship matches and things like that on." He also shared that he does not believe Tony Khan is holding off on ROH to keep it involved in AEW's television rights next year. He said, quote, "I think it's more Warner Bros. Discovery trying to figure out what it's doing next. I don't think it's so much the rights deal as that the company is doing so many cost cuts. So agreeing to add cost to something that they're probably putting off. As I mentioned, Warner Bros. Discovery has had a bit of a tough year when it comes to cost cutting. And clearly, Tony Khan wants to do something with Warner Bros. Discovery when it comes to the Ring of Honor brand. However, at this period of time, Warner Bros. Discovery is struggling somewhat. I mean, they had the merger, and they then scrapped and cancelled all of these projects, including, the Batgirl film, etc. And they thought that was going to save them a load of money. It ended up actually costing them a lot of money because the stock market freaked out. They lost a ton of money on the share price. And then because the money had kind of just evaporated like that, they only had the budget to release 2 films this year. One of them was the Olivia Wilde film, which I think is critically flopped somewhat. And the other film is the Black Adam film with The Rock. I think they're hoping that that's going to make a ton of money. It's a DC film. It's a Rock film. It probably will do well, even if it's actually not a great film in itself. So maybe next year, maybe when Tony Khan has his discussions with Warner Bros. Discovery, maybe that's when we'll find out more about the future of Ring of Honor. Clearly, Tony Khan wants it to be involved in the Warner Bros. Discovery family or portfolio. And I think he needs to. I think, as Meltzer mentions, he's trying to keep it alive on AEW TV every week. But whilst doing so, it's somewhat diluting the AEW product because you've got so many titles on the show and every match feels like a title match because you need to keep those titles alive. It's difficult. And frankly, if Ring of Honor did have its own weekly television series, it'd solve so many problems for Tony Khan right now because the huge roster he has, he could just split it in half. And he could just go, you work on that brand, you work on that brand. Eventually, once per year, we can do a super show. We can swap people over occasionally. That's what we'll do. And that resolves a lot of problems. but until he does that, he's got an unhappy and a bloated roster. Finally, winter is coming, and so is the event. A major AEW event looks to be confirmed to return this year. AEW Dynamite, of course, has numerous special editions per year, from the likes of Beach Break to Grand Slam, etc. And appearing on the My Mom's Basement podcast with Robbie Fox, AEW President Tony Khan was asked whether a Winter is Coming edition of Dynamite would be returning this year. Khan answered, quote, "I can tell you that there will be a Winter is Coming edition of Dynamite this year. This, of course, will be the third installment, after the first being in 2020 and the last one being last year as well." So there you go, Winter is coming. It'll be at some point, I would assume, in December. But there you go, guys. That's the latest AEW news for you. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right-hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.